When most people think of ancient Rome, they picture gladiators, Julius Caesar, and maybe Russell Crowe yelling, "Are you not entertained?" But the real Roman Empire was far stranger than anything Hollywood could dream up. We're talking about a civilization that had some extremely questionable dental hygiene practices, paid premium prices for gladiator sweat, and had a goddess specifically for sewers. These weren't primitive people. They built concrete that outlasts ours and engineered bridges in 10 days. They just had some truly bizarre ideas about medicine, fashion, and what constitutes acceptable dinner conversation. Ever wondered what Romans used instead of toilet paper, or why they thought drinking wolf blood was a good idea? Buckle up. And welcome to Facts to Relax 2's 30 of the weirdest, most disturbing, and downright shocking facts about ancient Rome that your history teacher definitely didn't mention. Trust me, after this video, you'll never look at a toga the same way again. Also, if you have a moment, why don't you comment down below where you're listening from? And while you're out there, why not give us a like and subscribe? Any little bit helps. Now, on to the facts. Number 1. Urine as mouthwash. The ancient Romans had a rather pungent approach to dental hygiene that would make modern dentists recoil in horror. They discovered that urine, particularly stale urine, contained high levels of ammonia, a powerful cleaning agent. This made it surprisingly effective at whitening teeth and freshening breath, despite the obvious drawbacks. The practice was so widespread that urine became a valuable commodity, collected from public urinals and sold to those seeking a brighter smile. Portuguese urine was particularly prized for its supposed superior quality. The poet Catullus even mocked a Spanish acquaintance for his gleaming white teeth, suggesting they were the result of excessive urine use. While the Romans were certainly onto something chemically speaking, ammonia is still used in cleaning products today. Most of us would probably prefer our minty toothpaste over this ancient alternative. It's a reminder that effective doesn't always mean pleasant. Number 2. Social public toilets. Roman public latrines were far from the private, individual stalls we expect today. Instead, they featured long marble or wooden benches with keyhole-shaped openings, arranged in rows where dozens of people could sit shoulder to shoulder while attending to their business. There were no partitions, doors, or any semblance of privacy. Remarkably, Romans didn't find this awkward at all. In fact, these latrines were considered social hubs where citizens would gather to chat, discuss politics, conduct business deals, and catch up on gossip. The wealthy even brought slaves to reserve their spots during busy times. Running water flowed beneath the seats to carry waste away to the sewers, while a shallow channel of clean water ran in front for rinsing the communal sponge on a stick. Archaeological evidence shows these facilities were often beautifully decorated with mosaics and frescoes, treating them as legitimate public spaces rather than shameful necessities. Number 3. The communal sponge stick. Perhaps nothing illustrates the vast cultural gulf between ancient Rome and modern society quite like the tussorium, the communal sponge on a stick used for personal hygiene after using the toilet. This device consisted of a natural sea sponge attached to a wooden stick, which sat in a bucket of vinegar, salt water, or running water between uses. After finishing their business, Romans would grab the stick, use the sponge end for cleaning, rinse it in the channel of water running through the latrine, and return it for the next person. While the vinegar or salt water provided some antibacterial properties, this was still essentially sharing a toilet brush with everyone in your community. Historians debate whether each person brought their own or if they were truly communal, but evidence suggests public facilities used shared ones. The tussorium even appears in historical accounts of martyrdom. A Roman soldier reportedly used one as a weapon, showing these implements were sturdy enough to be dangerous. Number 4. Tax on urine collection and laundries. The Roman Empire had an entire industry built around collecting and selling human urine, which seems bizarre until you understand its practical applications. Fullers, the ancient equivalent of dry cleaners, desperately needed urine for their work. The ammonia in aged urine was essential for removing oils and grease from woolen togas and for setting dyes in fabrics. Large clay pots were placed on street corners specifically for public urination, and their contents were regularly collected by fullers or their workers. The demand was so high that Emperor Nero actually imposed a tax on urine collection, known as the vectigal urinae. When his son Titus complained about the disgusting nature of this tax, Nero reportedly held up a gold coin and asked if it smelled bad, coining the phrase pecunia non olet, money doesn't smell. This pragmatic approach to waste recycling shows the Romans were early pioneers of the circular economy, even if their methods seem unsanitary by today's standards. Number 5. Gladiator blood medicine. Romans believed that drinking the blood of gladiators could cure epilepsy, a condition they called morbus comitialis. This superstition was so widespread that crowds would rush into the arena after gladiatorial combats, cups in hand, eager to collect the still warm blood of fallen fighters. The logic behind this grisly practice stemmed from the belief that the strength, courage, and vital life force of these powerful warriors could be transferred to the sick through their blood. Pliny the Elder documented this practice in his Natural History, noting that epileptics would drink the blood as if from living cups. The belief persisted for centuries, with some accounts suggesting that even wealthy Romans would pay premium prices for gladiator blood from particularly famous fighters. This macabre medical practice reflects the Roman fascination with gladiators as superhuman figures whose very essence held magical properties. Modern medicine, of course, has found no therapeutic value in this treatment, though it remains a fascinating glimpse into ancient medical beliefs. Number 6. Mouse brain toothpaste. If urine mouthwash wasn't strange enough, Romans also turned to rodents for their dental care needs. Mouse brains, mixed with various other ingredients, were used as a tooth-cleaning paste in ancient Rome. The recipe typically involved crushing mouse brains into a powder and mixing them with other substances to create an abrasive paste for scrubbing teeth. This wasn't just a fringe practice. It appears in multiple Roman medical texts as a legitimate dental remedy. The reasoning behind this peculiar ingredient is lost to history, though it may have been related to the Roman tendency to attribute medicinal properties to various animal parts. Mice were abundant, making their brains an accessible ingredient for those who couldn't afford more expensive dental treatments. While we might gag at the thought today, it's worth noting that the abrasive action of scrubbing teeth with any paste would have provided some cleaning benefit, regardless of the questionable ingredients. Still, it's safe to say that modern fluoride toothpaste represents a significant improvement in both effectiveness and palatability. Number 7. Dormice delicacy. The Romans had a particular fondness for eating dormice, those adorable, chubby rodents that look like a cross between a mouse and a squirrel. But these weren't just caught and roasted. Wealthy Romans raised them in special terracotta jars called gladiator, where the dormice were fattened in darkness on a diet of acorns, chestnuts, and walnuts. When plump enough, they were considered ready for the table. The most popular preparation involved stuffing the dormice with minced pork, pine nuts, and various seasonings, then roasting them to create a crispy exterior. They were often served as an appetizer at elaborate banquets, sometimes coated in honey and poppy seeds. The Roman cookbook Apicius contains several dormouse recipes, treating them as seriously as any other gourmet ingredient. Archaeological evidence confirms this practice. Gladiator have been found at numerous Roman sites across Europe. While eating rodents might seem shocking to modern Western sensibilities, it's worth noting that many cultures around the world still consume various rodent species today, and the Romans simply viewed dormice as we might view quail or rabbit. Number 8. Flamingo tongues. In the endless quest to display wealth and sophistication, wealthy Romans developed a taste for one of the most extravagant and wasteful delicacies imaginable: flamingo tongues. These weren't just rare, they required killing an entire flamingo for a single bite-sized morsel. The tongues were prized for their supposed delicate flavor and were served at the most exclusive banquets as a symbol of extreme luxury. The Roman historian Suetonius records that Emperor Vitellius served a dish containing flamingo tongues, along with other exotic ingredients like peacock brains and lamprey milt, on a massive platter he called the Shield of Minerva. The environmental impact must have been staggering. hundreds or thousands of flamingos would have been slaughtered to provide enough tongues for a single elaborate feast. This practice exemplifies the excess of Roman elite culture, where the rarity and expense of an ingredient mattered more than its actual taste. It also demonstrates how conspicuous consumption in ancient Rome reached levels that would make even modern luxury dining seem modest by comparison. Number 9. Garum fish sauce. Garum was the ketchup of the Roman Empire, a fermented fish sauce that Romans put on virtually everything. Made by layering fish, often anchovies or mackerel, with salt in large vats and leaving them to ferment in the sun for weeks or months, garum was the result of enzymatic breakdown that created an intensely savory, umami-rich liquid. The smell during production was reportedly so overwhelming that garum factories were banned from operating within city limits. Despite its pungent origins, the finished product was beloved throughout the empire and used as a seasoning, cooking ingredient, and even a medicine. The finest garum, called garum sociorum, came from Spain and could cost more than the most expensive wines. Romans added it to everything from vegetables to desserts, and it appeared in nearly every recipe in the ancient cookbook Apicius. Interestingly, garum is quite similar to modern Asian fish sauces like Vietnamese nuoc mam or Thai nam pla, which are made using nearly identical fermentation processes. This suggests the Romans had sophisticated palates that appreciated complex, fermented flavors. They just happened to apply them more liberally than we might today. Number 10. The myth of vomiting between courses. One of the most persistent myths about Roman banquets is that wealthy diners would deliberately vomit between courses to make room for more food, supposedly using special vomitoria for this purpose. The truth is more nuanced and less disgusting than popular culture suggests. While there are historical accounts of some excessive diners inducing vomiting, the Emperor Claudius was said to have done this, and Seneca criticized the practice. It was not standard banquet etiquette and was actually considered vulgar and gluttonous by most Romans. The term vomitorium has been wildly misunderstood. It actually refers to the passageways in amphitheaters and stadiums through which crowds would spew forth, not rooms for purging food. That said, Roman banquets could last for hours with multiple courses, and some overindulgent diners did occasionally make themselves sick, either accidentally or deliberately. The confusion likely arose from a combination of a few documented cases of excess, the misinterpretation of vomitorium, and our modern fascination with Roman decadence. While Romans certainly enjoyed their food and some took it to extremes, the image of routine, socially acceptable purging is largely a misconception. Number 11. Peacock tongues and roasted parrots. The Roman elite's obsession with exotic and expensive foods extended beyond flamingos to include other colorful birds that were more decorative than delicious. Peacock tongues joined the list of absurdly extravagant delicacies, requiring the slaughter of dozens of these magnificent birds for a single dish. Peacocks were originally kept as ornamental animals in Roman gardens, prized for their stunning plumage, but wealthy Romans eventually decided that eating them, or at least their tongues, was the ultimate display of luxury. Roasted parrots were another fashionable dish, despite reportedly tasting quite ordinary. These tropical birds had to be imported at great expense from Africa and India, making them a symbol of Rome's vast trading networks and the host's wealth. The Roman poet Martial criticized this wasteful practice, lamenting that such beautiful creatures were killed merely to satisfy jaded palates. Emperor Heliogabalus allegedly served parrot heads at banquets as a conversation piece. These culinary choices had less to do with flavor and everything to do with conspicuous consumption, proving you could afford to destroy something rare and beautiful just for a meal. Number 12. Honey-glazed mice. While dormice were the premium rodent delicacy, regular mice also found their way onto Roman tables, particularly when prepared with honey glaze. These weren't the disease-carrying house mice we associate with infestations, but rather field mice that were considered relatively clean and safe to eat. The preparation typically involved gutting and cleaning the mice, then coating them in honey and sometimes poppy seeds before roasting them until crispy. They were served as appetizers or snacks at banquets, often arranged artfully on platters. The honey-glazed served multiple purposes. It added sweetness to balance the gamey flavor, created an appealing golden brown appearance, and helped preserve the meat. From a practical standpoint, mice were abundant, easy to catch, and required minimal feed if raised domestically, making them an accessible protein source across social classes. The wealthy ate them as novelties, while poorer Romans might have consumed them out of necessity. This practice wasn't unique to Rome. Many ancient cultures ate rodents, and some modern cuisines still do. The Roman innovation was elevating mice to banquet-worthy status through elaborate preparation methods. Number 13. Crocodile dung face cream. Roman beauty standards drove women and some men to use some truly bizarre cosmetic ingredients, with crocodile dung ranking among the strangest. This exotic substance was imported from Egypt at considerable expense and mixed with other ingredients to create face masks believed to have anti-aging properties. The logic behind this choice is unclear, though it may have been related to the Roman fascination with Egyptian culture and the belief that Cleopatra herself used such treatments. Crocodile dung was thought to tighten skin, reduce wrinkles, and improve complexion when applied as a paste and left to dry. Other animal dungs were also used in Roman cosmetics. Some recipes called for nightingale droppings mixed with milk as a skin whitener. These treatments were marketed by ancient beauty entrepreneurs who made fortunes selling exotic ingredients to status-conscious Romans. While modern dermatologists would be horrified by the bacterial contamination risks, some ancient beauty treatments did have legitimate benefits, though crocodile dung probably wasn't one of them. This practice exemplifies how far Romans would go in pursuit of beauty, willing to smear themselves with excrement if it promised eternal youth. Number 14. Lead-based makeup. Roman women's pursuit of beauty came with a deadly price: lead poisoning from their cosmetics. White lead, lead carbonate, was the foundation of Roman makeup, literally and figuratively. Women applied it liberally to achieve the pale complexion that was fashionable among the upper classes. Tan skin indicated outdoor labor and lower social status. This white lead foundation was called cerussa and was manufactured by exposing lead strips to vinegar vapors in sealed pots, creating a white powder that was then mixed with water or oil. Women would cake this onto their faces daily, sometimes adding red lead to their cheeks and lips for color. The toxic effects were devastating. Lead absorption through the skin caused neurological damage, infertility, kidney failure, and premature death. Symptoms included headaches, memory loss, mood swings, and eventually paralysis. Despite some physicians warning against these cosmetics, social pressure to maintain fashionable pale skin kept women using them. Ironically, the lead makeup also caused the very skin problems it was meant to conceal, creating a vicious cycle where more makeup was needed to cover lead-induced skin damage. Number 15. Blonde wig fashion. Roman beauty standards underwent a dramatic shift when blonde hair became fashionable, likely influenced by contact with Germanic tribes during military campaigns. Naturally dark-haired Roman women suddenly coveted the golden locks of their northern neighbors, creating a booming market for blonde wigs and hair dye. The most prized wigs were made from the hair of enslaved Germanic women who were forced to have their heads shaved to supply this luxury market. These wigs were expensive status symbols that only wealthy women could afford. For those who couldn't buy wigs, various hair lightening concoctions were available, though many were dangerous. One popular recipe involved pigeon dung and ashes. Another used a caustic mixture that often damaged hair beyond repair. The poet Ovid wrote instructions for bleaching hair, while Martial mocked women whose hair fell out from excessive chemical treatments. This blonde obsession reflected Rome's complex relationship with the barbarian peoples they conquered, simultaneously viewing them as inferior while coveting their physical characteristics. The irony wasn't lost on Roman satirists, who criticized women for trying to look like the very people Rome was fighting. Number 16. Impractical togas. The toga, Rome's most iconic garment, was actually one of the most impractical pieces of clothing ever devised. A formal toga required approximately 20 feet of heavy woolen fabric, weighing up to 15 pounds, draped in a specific complex manner that required assistance to put on correctly. The garment had no fasteners. It stayed on purely through careful draping and the wearer's constant attention to keeping it in place. Any vigorous movement could cause the entire thing to unravel, and raising your arms too high was risky. Roman citizens were required to wear togas for official business, court appearances, and formal occasions, making them a symbol of citizenship and respectability. However, they were so uncomfortable and restrictive that men would change out of them as soon as possible. The Emperor Augustus reportedly complained that Romans were abandoning their togas for more practical Greek-style clothing. Special slaves called vestiplici were employed just to fold and maintain togas properly. The toga's impracticality was actually part of its appeal. Wearing one demonstrated you were wealthy enough not to perform manual labor, as working in a toga was virtually impossible. Number 17. Tyrian purple dye. Tyrian purple, also called royal purple or imperial purple, was the most expensive dye in the ancient world, worth more than its weight in gold. The color was so costly and exclusive that laws restricted its use to emperors and the highest-ranking officials. The dye came from the mucus secretions of predatory sea snails, primarily Murex brandaris and Murex trunculus, found in the Mediterranean. The production process was extraordinarily labor-intensive. Approximately 12,000 snails were needed to produce just 1.4 grams of dye, enough to color a single garment's trim. The snails had to be collected, cracked open, and their hypobranchial glands extracted and processed. The resulting substance initially appeared yellowish but turned purple when exposed to sunlight and air. The smell during production was notoriously putrid. Ancient dye works were located far from populated areas due to the stench. A pound of Tyrian purple dyed silk cost roughly 3 pounds of gold. The color became so associated with imperial power that born in the purple, porphyrogenitos, referred to children born to reigning emperors. This single color represented the pinnacle of Roman luxury and the vast resources of the empire. Number 18. Cabbage cure-all. The ancient Roman statesman Cato the Elder was convinced that cabbage was a miracle cure for virtually every ailment known to humanity, and he wasn't alone in this belief. In his agricultural treatise De Agricultura, Cato praised cabbage as superior to all other vegetables and prescribed it for dozens of conditions. Indigestion? Eat raw cabbage. Wounds? Apply cabbage poultice. Hangovers? Cabbage. Cancer? Cabbage. Joint pain, insomnia, headaches? Cabbage for everything. He even claimed that eating cabbage would allow you to drink as much as you like without getting drunk, and that cabbage urine, yes, urine from people who ate cabbage, had medicinal properties. Romans ate cabbage raw, cooked, and fermented, and applied it externally as compresses. While cabbage does contain beneficial nutrients like vitamin C and fiber, it certainly wasn't the panacea Romans believed it to be. This obsession with cabbage as a cure-all reflects the Roman tendency to latch onto simple solutions for complex medical problems. Interestingly, Cato's cabbage evangelism may have had political motivations. He was known for promoting traditional Roman values and rejecting Greek medicine, positioning humble cabbage as a patriotic alternative to foreign medical practices. Number 19. Wolf blood for courage. Romans believed that consuming wolf blood would transfer the animal's legendary courage and ferocity to the drinker, a concept rooted in sympathetic magic, the idea that eating something grants you its properties. This belief was particularly popular among soldiers and gladiators who sought to enhance their bravery before battle. The practice involved drinking fresh wolf blood, sometimes mixed with wine, to make it more palatable. Wolves held special significance in Roman culture, dating back to the founding myth of Romulus and Remus being nursed by a she-wolf, so consuming wolf blood connected the drinker to Rome's legendary origins. Pliny the Elder documented this practice in his Natural History, noting that wolf blood was also believed to cure various ailments. The belief extended to other wolf parts. Wearing wolf skin was thought to provide protection, and wolf teeth were carried as amulets. This wasn't unique to Romans. Many ancient cultures practiced similar forms of sympathetic magic, believing that consuming powerful predators would transfer their strength. Modern science has found no evidence that drinking animal blood provides any benefits beyond basic nutrition, but the psychological placebo effect may have genuinely boosted confidence among believers. Number 20. Gladiator sweat aphrodisiac. In one of ancient Rome's strangest beauty and wellness trends, gladiator sweat was collected, bottled, and sold as an aphrodisiac and cosmetic product. After gladiators finished training or fighting, slaves would scrape the sweat, oil, and dirt from their bodies using a tool called a strigil, and this mixture was carefully collected and sold to eager customers. Women particularly prized this substance, believing that applying it to their skin would make them more attractive and that consuming it would enhance sexual desire. The logic combined several Roman beliefs. Gladiators were seen as peak physical specimens, their bodily fluids were thought to contain their strength and virility, and anything associated with these celebrity fighters was considered valuable. Bottles of gladiator sweat from famous fighters commanded premium prices. Much like celebrity-endorsed products today, the Roman physician Galen mentioned this practice with obvious distaste, but it remained popular despite medical skepticism. This bizarre commodity exemplifies the Roman obsession with gladiators, who occupied a paradoxical social position, technically low status but culturally idolized. The practice also reveals Roman attitudes toward the body, where physical substances were believed to carry transferable properties, making even someone's sweat a valuable commodity. Number 21. Electric eels for headaches. Roman physicians developed a shocking treatment for headaches. Literally, they discovered that electric rays, torpedo fish, and electric eels could produce powerful electrical discharges, and they decided this property could be harnessed for medical purposes. The treatment involved placing a live electric fish directly on the patient's head, allowing it to deliver repeated shocks. The physician Scribonius Largus, who served under Emperor Claudius, documented this procedure in his medical writings, recommending it for chronic headaches and migraines. The treatment was also used for gout, with the fish placed on the affected joint until the area became numb. While this sounds like medieval torture, there's actually some scientific basis. Electrical stimulation can temporarily disrupt pain signals, similar to modern TENS, transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation therapy. However, the Romans had no way to control the voltage or duration of shocks, making the treatment unpredictable and potentially dangerous. Patients had to endure repeated jolts until the fish exhausted itself or the physician decided enough was enough. This early form of electrotherapy demonstrates Roman willingness to experiment with natural phenomena for medical purposes, even if their methods were crude by modern standards. Number 22. Goat dung for baldness. Hair loss was as distressing to ancient Romans as it is today, and they pursued equally desperate remedies, including rubbing goat dung on their heads. Various recipes existed for baldness treatments, but many involved animal feces mixed with other ingredients. One popular formula combined goat dung with wine or vinegar to create a paste that was applied to the scalp and left overnight. The theory behind this treatment is unclear, though it may have been related to the belief that the warmth generated by decomposing organic matter would stimulate hair growth. Other recipes called for bear grease, crushed beetles, or burned hedgehog ashes. Julius Caesar himself reportedly suffered from baldness and was sensitive about it, allegedly trying various remedies and eventually adopting his famous laurel wreath, partly to conceal his receding hairline. Pliny the Elder's natural history contains numerous baldness cures, each more bizarre than the last. The Roman obsession with hair loss treatments spawned an entire industry of dubious remedies sold by enterprising merchants. Unsurprisingly, none of these treatments worked, though the placebo effect may have provided some psychological comfort. Modern dermatology has proven that smearing dung on your head does nothing for hair growth, it just makes you smell terrible. Number 23. Flooding the Colosseum. The Colosseum's engineering capabilities were so advanced that it could be flooded with water for naumachia, spectacular mock naval battles that recreated famous historical sea conflicts. The Romans developed a sophisticated system of aqueducts and drains that could fill the arena floor with several feet of water, then drain it afterward. These aquatic spectacles featured real warships, albeit smaller versions, hundreds of participants, and genuine combat that often resulted in actual deaths. The first naumachia in the Colosseum was organized by Emperor Titus during the arena's inauguration in 80 CE, recreating a battle between Athens and Syracuse. These events were incredibly expensive and logistically complex. The ships had to be built, the water system maintained, and participants trained in naval combat. Some historians debate whether the Colosseum itself was flooded or if naumachiae were held in other specially constructed basins, as the later addition of underground chambers, the hypogeum, would have made flooding impossible. Regardless, the Romans definitely staged elaborate naval battles in flooded arenas, demonstrating their engineering prowess and their commitment to ever more spectacular entertainment. These events exemplified Roman excess, spending enormous resources to recreate sea battles in the middle of a landlocked arena, all for a few hours of public entertainment. Number 24. Colosseum Death Toll. The Colosseum's death toll is almost incomprehensible by modern standards. Over its approximately 350 years of active use, an estimated 500,000 people and over 1 million animals perished within its walls. These weren't just gladiatorial combats. The deaths included criminals executed in elaborate public spectacles, prisoners of war forced to fight, condemned individuals thrown to wild animals, damnatio ad bestias, and participants in mock battles. The animal death toll was particularly staggering. Lions, tigers, bears, elephants, rhinoceroses, hippopotamuses, crocodiles, ostriches, and countless other species were imported from across the empire and slaughtered for entertainment. During the Colosseum's 100-day inauguration games under Emperor Titus, approximately 9,000 animals were killed. Emperor Trajan's victory celebrations after the Dacian Wars featured games lasting 123 days with 11,000 animals killed. These mass slaughters had ecological consequences. North African elephants and lions were driven to regional extinction partly due to capture for Roman games. The scale of death reflects both the Roman appetite for violent spectacle and the empire's vast resources. Modern scholars debate the exact numbers, but even conservative estimates paint a picture of industrial-scale killing for entertainment purposes. Number 25. Vegetarian gladiators. Contrary to the image of gladiators as meat-eating warriors, archaeological evidence reveals they were predominantly vegetarian, earning them the nickname hordeari, barley men. Analysis of gladiator bones from a cemetery in Ephesus showed their diet consisted mainly of barley, beans, and dried fruit, with very little meat. This wasn't due to ethical concerns but practical training considerations. The high-carbohydrate, low-protein diet helped gladiators build a layer of subcutaneous fat that provided protection during combat. It could cushion blows and reduce bleeding from superficial cuts while still allowing wounds to look dramatic for the crowd. The fat layer made fights bloodier in appearance without being immediately lethal, prolonging the spectacle. Gladiators also consumed a drink made from plant ash, which provided calcium to strengthen bones, crucial for men who regularly suffered fractures and injuries. Their diet was carefully controlled by their trainers, who understood sports nutrition in surprisingly sophisticated ways. After fights, successful gladiators might be rewarded with meat, wine, and other luxuries, but their training diet remained largely plant-based. This reveals that Roman gladiator schools operated more like modern athletic training facilities than we might imagine, with specific dietary regimens designed to optimize performance and survival. Number 26. Gladiator celebrity culture. Successful gladiators were the rock stars of ancient Rome, enjoying fame, wealth, and adulation that transcended their technically low social status. The most famous gladiators had fan clubs, inspired graffiti throughout Roman cities, and were featured in mosaics and artwork. Women of all social classes were reportedly infatuated with gladiators. Graffiti in Pompeii describes one gladiator as the sigh of the girls and another as the glory of the girls. Gladiators endorsed products much like modern athletes, with their names and images used to sell everything from oil lamps to wine. Some became so wealthy they could buy their freedom and retire comfortably. Flamma, one of the most famous gladiators, won his freedom 4 times but chose to continue fighting, ultimately competing in 34 battles. Gladiators received gifts from admirers, were invited to private parties, and some even had affairs with aristocratic women. The Empress Faustina was rumored to have been obsessed with a gladiator. This celebrity status created a paradox. Gladiators were simultaneously despised as infames, people without honor, and idolized as heroes. Their fame was so powerful that Emperor Commodus himself fought as a gladiator, believing it would increase his popularity, though this decision was viewed as scandalous by the Senate. Number 27. Chariot racing riots. While gladiatorial combat gets most of the attention today, chariot racing was actually the most popular sport in ancient Rome, and it inspired a fanaticism that makes modern soccer hooliganism look tame. Romans were divided into racing factions, the blues, greens, reds, and whites, and supported their teams with religious fervor. These weren't just sports teams, they became political and social identities that could spark massive riots. The most infamous was the Nika riots in Constantinople in 532 CE, where blues and greens temporarily united against Emperor Justinian, resulting in nearly half the city being burned and an estimated 30,000 deaths. Fans would curse opposing charioteers using lead tablets inscribed with spells, bribe officials, and sometimes poison rival horses. Successful charioteers became incredibly wealthy. One named Diocles earned 35 million sesterces over his career, equivalent to the pay of an entire Roman legion for a year. The Circus Maximus, Rome's main racing venue, held up to 250,000 spectators, about a quarter of Rome's population. Emperors understood that controlling the chariot races meant controlling public opinion, leading to the phrase "bread and circuses," panem et circenses, to describe how rulers kept the masses content. The passion for chariot racing exceeded even gladiatorial games in its ability to mobilize and inflame the Roman public. Number 28. Buried alive Vestal virgins. The Vestal virgins held one of the most prestigious and terrifying positions in Roman religion. These priestesses of Vesta, goddess of the hearth, were required to maintain their virginity for 30 years of service, and the punishment for breaking this vow was horrific, being buried alive. The ritual, called live burial, vivae de fossa, involved the condemned Vestal being sealed in an underground chamber with a small amount of bread, water, oil, and a lamp, just enough to briefly prolong the agony. The chamber was then covered with earth. This punishment was considered necessary because Vestal virgins were believed to protect Rome itself. Their impurity could bring disaster to the entire city. The Vestals couldn't be executed by normal means because their persons were sacrosanct, so this method technically didn't involve directly killing them. Accusations against Vestals often emerged during times of crisis, when Romans sought scapegoats for military defeats or natural disasters. Some historians believe many accused Vestals were actually innocent, victims of political machinations or mass hysteria. The last recorded live burial of a Vestal occurred in 216 BCE after Rome's devastating defeat at Cannae. This brutal punishment exemplifies how Roman religion intertwined with state security and how women's bodies were seen as vessels for the city's spiritual purity. Number 29. Parricide punishment. The Roman punishment for parricide, killing one's father, was so elaborate and horrifying it seems designed more for psychological terror than practical execution. The condemned person was sewn into a leather sack along with a dog, a rooster, a viper, and a monkey, then thrown into a river or the sea. Each animal was chosen symbolically. The dog represented shamelessness, the rooster symbolized aggression toward one's parent, roosters were thought to attack their fathers, the viper represented treachery. Vipers were believed to eat their way out of their mother's womb, and the monkey was included as a grotesque parody of humanity. The victim would drown while being bitten, clawed, and pecked by the terrified animals in the sack. This punishment, called puena culae, was reserved specifically for parricide because Romans considered killing one's father the ultimate crime against family and social order. The paterfamilias, male head of household, held absolute authority, and murdering him threatened the foundation of Roman society. Initially, the punishment involved only the sack and water, with animals added later to increase the horror. If a suitable body of water wasn't available, the sack might be thrown from a cliff, or the condemned burned alive instead. This punishment was rarely carried out. Its very existence served as a deterrent, a nightmare scenario that reinforced paternal authority throughout Roman society. Number 30. Cloacina, goddess of sewers. The Romans took their infrastructure so seriously that they had a goddess specifically dedicated to sewers, Cloacina, whose name derives from cloaca, sewer or drain. Originally an Etruscan deity associated with purification, Cloacina was adopted by Romans and became the protector of the Cloaca Maxima, Rome's great sewer system. She had a shrine in the Roman Forum, one of the city's most important public spaces, indicating that sewer maintenance was considered a sacred duty. Romans didn't see sewers as merely utilitarian, they were essential to public health, urban cleanliness, and civic pride. The Cloaca Maxima, built in the 6th century BCE, was an engineering marvel that drained the marshy valley between Rome's hills, making urban development possible. It still functions today, over 2,500 years later. Cloacina was also associated with purification in a broader sense, including sexual purity. Her shrine was reportedly where prostitutes performed purification rituals. The existence of a sewer goddess reveals Roman pragmatism. If something was important to society's functioning, it deserved divine protection. This wasn't unusual. Romans had gods for doorways, janers, boundaries, and even the act of manuring fields sterculius, from stercus meaning dung. The deification of sewers shows how Romans integrated practical infrastructure concerns with religious devotion, recognizing that civilization depended on unglamorous but essential systems. Bonus fact, number 31, Roman concrete's lost secret. For a bonus fact, Roman concrete was superior to modern concrete in many ways, yet the exact formula was lost for over a millennium. Roman structures like the Pantheon, with the world's largest unreinforced concrete dome, and harbour installations have survived 2,000 years, while modern concrete often deteriorates within decades. Recent scientific analysis has revealed why. Romans used volcanic ash, pozzolana, mixed with lime and seawater, creating a chemical reaction that produced aluminum tobamorite crystals. These crystals made the concrete stronger over time, especially in seawater, where modern concrete crumbles. Roman maritime concrete actually heals itself as seawater interacts with the lime, filling cracks with new minerals. The Romans didn't understand the chemistry. They discovered through trial and error that volcanic ash created superior concrete. After Rome's fall, this knowledge was lost because it was transmitted through practical apprenticeship rather than written texts. Medieval builders couldn't replicate Roman concrete's properties, leading to different architectural approaches. Only in recent decades have scientists understood why Roman concrete was so durable. Researchers are now trying to recreate it, as it could revolutionize modern construction and reduce the massive carbon footprint of cement production. This lost technology reminds us that technological progress isn't always linear. Sometimes ancient civilizations possessed knowledge that later generations had to rediscover. Well, that's all of them, folks. Thank you for listening to Facts to Relax 2's 30 of the weirdest, most disturbing, and downright shocking facts about ancient Rome. Did you hear anything new that you weren't aware of? If so, let us know down below. If you've enjoyed this video and would like to hear more like it, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and if you have a time period you'd like us to find weird facts for, please leave your suggestions down below. We read all the comments. And until we meet again, stay relaxed.